Good afternoon, everyone. So today I would be rationalizing our quiz in research last time, the one that you have taken last week. I wasn't able to return to your test paper because um, I was out last week. So hopefully this recording could help you and guide you as you proceed to reviewing the topic in research then. Um, by the way, our exam would be 50 item test, all of which will be multiple choice. These are, it is not entirely the same to this quiz, but it's parallel to this kind of test. So the way I structure the test is also the way I structure the second quarter exam. Although it might not be entirely the same, but so yeah, I hope you're going to learn something from this review or rationalization session for you to be acquainted, of course, of what's the correct answer to each of the questions. So let's begin with number one. Which of the following best describes the purpose of review of related literature in a research study? So in question number one, you are asked what's the purpose? What's the function or what's the reason of conducting review of related literature in the research study. So the best answer here is letter A, to identify gaps in existing studies and provide a context for the research. So, in your background of the study, you need to share what's the purpose of your research, what's the current situation, and what's the previous results or findings from other studies and literature. And based on the findings that you were able to gather, you're going to identify there the gaps or the missing things that are needed to be addressed through your research. So it's written in your chapter 1 as well as in your chapter 2. Aside from that, it also provides a context for research. So they need to know what your variables are, what you really need or what you really wanted to study for your chosen topic. So the answer in number one is letter A. Letter B, to present new findings from the researcher is not correct. To replace the methodology of a section. When you do a review of related literature, you may take note of the process, procedure, or the methodology conducted by previous studies, but you do not replace their methodology. We can get an idea of how they do it, but we're not replacing it when we do RRL. And letter D is also incorrect because it says here that you're gonna summarize all the works of other authors without analysis. It's always a no-no. Remember, when you do a review of related literature, you have to compare and contrast, look for similar ideas or similar findings from the authors that you have read, and you have to organize that just like your storytelling. You tell us what your study is all about and why is it really essential for us to or for you to conduct your study. So letter B, C, and D are incorrect, and the best answer in number one is letter A. Next, for number two, you are conducting a study on the impact of technology integration on students' academic performance. During the review of related literature, you discovered a gap. There's a missing thing. There are no studies focusing on rural schools. So, di na bala ang mga rural schools natin, di bala, sa mga provinces. How should you utilize this information in your research? So, the main gap here, remember, the main reason why we're conducting a thesis or why we're conducting a research is to address a discovered gap. And since there are no studies focusing on rural schools, what should we do then? We have to highlight the gap to justify the need for your study and position your research as addressing this gap. This is the best answer to number two. Okay. Next, number three, which of the following best describes related literature from related studies? Now, in the last session that we had, I highlighted to you how different related literature is from related studies. And the answer here is related literatures focuses on theories and concepts. That's why I told you what you're going to include in your literature are the theories that you have indicated in your theoretical framework, as well as the concepts or idea of what your variables or what your topic is all about, while related studies include research findings and methodologies. So, results, findings, or outcomes of the studies amuna da ginabutang natin sa related literature. So the answer in number three is letter B. Next, number four. You are writing the review of related literature for your study. Which of the following is an example of our related study? Again, you have realized earlier that related studies would include research findings and methodologies. And I think may keyword kita din nga nakita sa letter D, a peer-reviewed journal article presenting findings from an experiment on the effects of study habits on grades. So the answer in number 4 is letter D. May ara kita ginatalawag ng mga primary sources of data that we're going to primary sources in related literatures and related studies. And usually our primary sources are those peer-reviewed journal articles or those published theses or dissertations from 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 the researchers. These blog posts, however, are considered secondary source. Book chapter is usually the source of our concepts or ideas about our chosen topic, about student motivation. So this is more of related literature. And this online news article about recent trends in education would just tell you about the concept of the trends. Anong mga bag-o nga trend in education? So still, concepts. So those are related literature. So the only related study in this particular item is letter D, Delta. Next, number 5. You are synthesizing studies in your review of related literature about the effects of study habits on academic performance. How should you best approach these synthesis? So the question asks you, how are you going to approach the synthesis? So the best answer here is letter A. You compare and contrast the findings of the studies. So you look through it kung diin dito ang do pari-pariho. These authors have the same idea. Doon na ubrata man na siya when we had our practice exercise on writing review of related literature. So review lang ha. Identify common themes. Ano ang parariho sang ginpang combine mo to nga mga findings from related studies, and highlight gaps or inconsistencies which support why your study is relevant to be conducted. So that's the answer in number 5. Now let's proceed to number 6. Your research topic is the impact of social media on academic performance. Which source would be the most relevant to include on your review of related literature? So impact ha, meaning there's an effect maybe. That's the synonym for impact of social media on academic performance. Letter A blog post about social media trends in 2024 is just an idea of what social media trends is in 2024, and it does not connect or relate to the effect of social media on academic performance. So letter A is not the correct answer. Next, number 6, letter C, I mean, a magazine feature on famous social media influencers. So remember, academic performance usually entails with the grades, or yes, the grades of the students. So social media influencers usually are most, although not all of them, but most of them are no longer in school or no longer goes to school. So, no, no. You are just looking at social media influencers, not the effect of social media itself. Letter D, an online survey conducted by a YouTuber. Again, it only talks about the things that are done by a YouTuber, but it does not correlate or impact the academic performance. So the best answer here in number six is letter B, a journal article analyzing the effects of social media usage on high school students' grades. Remember, grades is academic performance. Number seven, you find a study similar to your research but conducted in another country. How should you integrate this in your review of related literature? The answer here is letter B. You compare and contrast its findings, ang findings ng international study nga nakita mo, with the local studies. You try to search as well local studies or studies conducted here in the Philippines, here in Region 6, or in your own locality here in Iloilo if there is any, or if may ara mo nakita sa may lab school nga former grade 10 students, then you could compare and contrast its findings. And if may nakita kaya nga gap, you highlight that research gap, because that research gap would really entail that there is a need for you to conduct your study. Next, number 8. You are writing about the role of technology and education. You find an outdated article from 2010. What should you do? So the best answer here is letter D. You use it cautiously, emphasizing how advancements have evolved since 2010. So it's not necessary that we exclude it entirely because it's too old, because I told you that when you write your review of related literature, it must be at least 5 years ago. So 2025 kita sabong, so mga 2020, amo nang pwede nyo nga kwaan. But in this particular situation, you have found an outdated article from 2010. So it's not necessary that you exclude it entirely because it's too old, because you're looking at the role of technology in education. Technology evolves, and its role in education evolved from traditional one to digital one. So yes, you can use it cautiously, emphasizing how advancements have evolved since then. So the answer number 8 is letter D. Number 9, during your review, you encounter conflicting findings, meaning lainanay ang findings from two studies on the same topic. What should you do? So the best answer here is mention both studies and discuss possible reasons for discrepancies. Nan. What are the other choices? Choose the study that aligns with your hypothesis and ignore the other. This is completely a no-no. When I told you to look for review of related studies, for example, the impact of study habits to the academic performance, if you have found a positive effect on study habits and academic performance, then you include it in your research, in your chapter 2 in particular. And if you have found also negative effect, you also include it there, because when you write your chapter 4 later on and the result is either positive or negative, at least you have already the findings that could either support or refute the results of your study. So that's the reason why you should include both, not exclude both studies, to avoid confusion. So again, the correct answer here is letter C. Next, number 10. You are reviewing a study that claims a new teaching method is effective but lacks sufficient evidence. How should you treat this study in your review of related literature? So, the best answer here is letter A. Acknowledge the study but point out its limitations and lack of evidence. So letter B is incorrect because you're just going to cite it as a reliable source without critiquing it. Letter C is also incorrect because you're going to exclude it entirely as unreliable. And letter D, use it as a basis for your methodology. So it's not good to use it as a basis for your methodology already because again, kita mo to, although it was found to be effective, but it lacks sufficient evidence. Okay? So the best answer here is letter A. Next, number 11. Which of the following is an example of a primary source for review of related literature? I think I have just introduced to you earlier about primary source. So the correct answer here is, of course, letter A, letter B, I'm sorry. A journal article presenting the results of an original experiment on learning outcomes. So may result, basta may findings gini from a journal article, published journal article that's relate primary source. So ang atin nga mga news article, atin mga textbooks, blog posts are usually secondary source. Number 12. Which of the following is an example of a primary source of RRL? Bo, liwat-liwat na lang. Again, basta gani, nag-present ikaw sa findings or results in that journal article, then that's primary source. So the answer in number 12 is letter C, a peer-reviewed journal article presenting findings on student behavior. Number 13. Why is it important to organize your review of related literature thematically rather than chronologically? Nga kinanglan i-organize natin siya by themes or by title, no? Instead of organizing them which study occurs first or which study is published first or last, nga amo na siya. So the best answer here is letter C. It makes the review more coherent by focusing on ideas rather than publication dates. Number 14. Which of the following sentences demonstrates proper citation in the review of related literature? So, ginapamangkot ka lang di proper citation. Gintudluan ta na kamo no. Your citation could either be narrative or parenthetical in-text citation. So, only letter A has a narrative in-text citation here. So according to Smith 2021, students' motivation increases when technology is used. So the answer is letter A, number 14. Number 15. What's the best strategy for avoiding plagiarism when writing your review of related literature? I think I need not to expound on this because we've been discussing this the whole time. So the answer here is letter C. Summarize key points in your own words and provide proper citations. We give credit to those people or to those where credit is due. So remember that. Number 16. A researcher wants to investigate whether there is a relationship between the number of hours students spend on social media and their academic performance. What is the most appropriate research design for this study? So, may keyword kita diri, relationship. Basta may relationship, that's correlational research design. So, the answer in number 16 is letter B. 17. You are conducting a study to test the effectiveness of a new teaching method in improving students' problem-solving skills. You divide a class into two groups. One uses the new method, also known as our experimental group, and the other uses the traditional method, so our control group. So what research design should you use? Of course, the correct answer is letter C, experimental research design. Now we move forward to number 19. 18, I mean. You are conducting a study on the effectiveness of peer tutoring in improving the mathematics performance of high school students. Who would be the most appropriate respondents or participants for your study? So of course, kailan taon nato ng effectiveness ang peer tutoring program, di dapat ang aton participants diri ang high school students who participate of course in peer tutoring programs. So the answer is letter B, bravo. Number 19. A research study is focused on assessing the reading comprehension levels of grade 8 students in rural schools. Based on this focus, which of the following best describes the appropriate locale or location where the study be conducted? So the correct answer may ara na da sa STEM nato no. Basahon niyo gid mayo ang aton nga questions ha kay sa question pa lang nga daan ara na da actually makita ang sabat. So may mga clues kita dira. So dapat basahon maayo. So of course, rural schools dara, the only letter B has rural areas. So public high schools in rural areas with diverse student population. So that's the answer in number 19, letter B, bravo. Number 20, you are developing a survey to measure students' attitude towards online learning. Why is it important to include scales or weights in your research instrument? So, di ba la, ginpakita ko sa inyo when using the video lesson that I have created for the topic research instrument. I have shown you varied types of research instrument or research tool, and I also showed to you how those research instruments differ from each other. Usually when we are having quantitative research, we're using, of course, questionnaires with scales and weights. That is to quantify responses, allowing for easier analysis and comparison para kapos maisip because these are examples of quantitative data. So, number 20, the answer is letter B. Number 21, your research objective is to evaluate the effectiveness of the newly implemented reading program for grade 7 students. Which of the following research instruments is most appropriate for achieving this objective? So, darlings, if we are looking at the effectiveness of something, meaning we have an intervention and we're looking through if how effective it is before the program was implemented and even after the program was implemented to see if really it has a significant effect on the um, grade 7 students in terms of their reading comprehension. So the correct answer here is letter C. So this is an example of an experimental research. Kay basta may ara kita intervention and we have experimental group and control group, then we have to have a pre-test and post-test to measure their reading comprehension before and after the program. So the answer in number 21 is letter C. 22. The objective of your research is to explore the experiences of students adopting to hybrid teaching methods. Which research instrument aligns best with the objective? So, if you're going to explore on the experiences of the teachers in adapting to hybrid teaching methods, kinanglan interview mo gina siya para mabalaan mo in depth about what their experiences are. Kay kung ma-checklist ka lang da, very limited ang sabat sang aton nga teachers. So you wouldn't know more about the methods or procedures or process that they did when they have adopted to that specific method. So the best answer here is letter A, a structured interview guide with open-ended questions. So tandaan nyo na ha, basta gani nag-explore kita experiences, stories nila, usually it's more of qualitative research. So you have to prepare with you your interview guide consisting of open-ended questions that your students or your participants or your informants would be answering. Next, number 23. Why is it important to validate a research instrument before data collection? So, di ba no, ginambalanta ka mo, during the pre-oral defense, you have to make sure your chapter 1 to 3 is all set, as well as the references, along with your research instrument. It must be there already, such that the panel members could see beforehand your research instrument, and as soon as you're ready, you have to validate that. And we have discussed this last time on our last session, no? The main reason why you should validate your research instrument before you conducted or you collected data to your participants or to your pilot participants is to ensure that the instrument aligns with the research objectives and measures what it intends to measure. Kaya di ba lang, gapangita kita tatlo ka experts, kag ambal ko sa inyo, dalon nyo yung research instrument, tapos may another sheet kamo nga may research title, Rationale, your statement of the problems, along with your conceptual framework, because those validators would check if the content of your research instrument could really gather necessary data to answer all your research questions as stated in the statement of the problem sa inyo nga chapter 1. So that's number 23. The answer is letter A. Number 24. A researcher conducts a pilot test of a survey and discovers that several questions are misunderstood by respondents. How does this highlight the importance of instrument validation? So, kay kung na-validate ang instrument, makita na ya sang imo nga validator sa expert kung maging kuha kadabi nga grammarian no nga sagad sa English no, makita na nila nga your questions are unambiguous, clear siya bala, and suitable for your target respondents. Kay kung imo nga respondents are for example mga high school students, as much as possible your statements or your questions must be in simplest form. You use the simple words such that they could understand immediately, clearly, each of the statements. Kay kung mabudlay na, you're going to use very sophisticated kag mga mabudlay, complicated nga terms, basi hindi maintindihan sa imong participants, and that would have significant negative effect on the results. Kay hindi nila maintindihan, ti palagpat na sila karon. So, that's the reason why very essential nga ipa-validate ang instrument because it would confirm that your questions are clear, claro, unambiguous, and suitable for your target respondents. So the answer number 24 is letter B, bravo. Now we move forward to number 25. Why is conducting reliability testing important for a research instrument? Now, tapos na kita no, na-validate na nato ng aton nga instrument, na-validate na sang tatlo ka experts. The next thing to do is to pilot test. Meaning, i-conduct naton, mag-gather kita data sang do similar characteristics nga student sa imo nga participants. For example, your participants are grade 10 students. Okay. So, ano mo na, solvents formula mo na, bala mo na ng sampling. Kung sino tong bilin, kung malabot sila mga 30 to 40, then sila na iya ang kuan pakandakan naton sang paansiro naton sila sang aton nga validated research instrument. So, anong reason sini? The answer here is to ensure that the instrument consistently produces the same results under similar conditions. So that's the main purpose of reliability. Reliability testing is to check if the instrument is consistent. It could consistently produce the same results under similar condition. Number 26. A researcher uses a survey to measure student stress levels. The survey is administered twice to the same group and the crunchback alpha result is 0.45. What does this indicate about the instrument? Diba, gintudluan ta ka muna. If the crunchback alpha, for example, tapos ka na reliability test, ginrun na sa imo statistician, imo data nga na-gather, and according sa crunchback alpha, the result is 0.45. That is less than 0.7, and this indicates that your survey lacks reliability, emphasizing the need for further testing or revision to achieve consistency. So the answer in number 26 is letter B. So amo nang ginahambal nila, darlings. All instruments that are valid are not always reliable. Tandaan nyo na ha. But all reliable research instruments are always valid. Tandaan nyo na sa ha. Next, number 27. Why is it important to conduct pilot testing before administering the final version of a research instrument? So the answer here is to identify and correct any errors or ambiguities in the instrument. Kaya para masigurado naton nga kung nakakandak na kita sang aton nga nakagather na kita sang essential data sa aton main respondents or participants, masabat yagid yaya ang aton mga research questions. So number 27, the answer is letter A. 28. A researcher conducts a pilot test of a survey measuring student motivation and finds that respondents struggle to understand several items due to unclear wording. How does this outcome highlight the importance of pilot testing? So the answer here is letter B. It allows for revision that makes the instrument more accurate and aligned to the research questions. So now let's proceed to 29. A researcher plans to interview students about their academic struggles. Which of the following best demonstrates adherence to ethical considerations in research? When I discussed to you about chapter 3, one major part of it is the ethical consideration, wherein since we're dealing with humans, human respondents, we have to ensure that when they join or participate in your research, their participation is solely voluntary. What else? The data that you will be gathering from them would be kept confidential. And since this is an interview, usually we provide pseudonyms or alias sa aton nga mga informants or participants, no? So the answer in number 29 is letter B, ensuring that participants is voluntary, providing informed consent and maintaining confidentiality of student responses. Number 30, which Republic Act ensures that participation in research is voluntary, provides informed consents, and maintains confidentiality of student responses? So the answer here is RA number 10173. So di ba, amo nang reason nga make sure gid naton nga may informed consent kita when we conduct the research, when we let the participants answer our research question. Dapat may informed consent, may voluntary participation, and of course we make sure that as researchers we handle with care and we keep the confidential data, especially mga grades sa kabataan or grades sa iban nga students nga i-request nyo from the advisors later on, because kung maglapta na siya pagkatapos makita sang iban, ibuli ang kung sino man ang nakita nila nga mga scores or grades nga nakita nila, pwede kita yung naka-violate kita sang RA number 10173 or the Data Privacy Act. So as researchers, you have to be very responsible in keeping those confidential data that you have gathered from the participants. Number 31, a study aims to examine the relationship between hours spent studying the exam and Okay, late lang. A study aims to examine the relationship between hours spent studying and exam scores among students. The researcher wants to see if there's a correlation between these two variables. Which statistical tool is most appropriate? So may keyword na kita na gusto mo lang tawon ang relationship, correlation of the two. And you know that among all these choices, only persons or correlation is a statistical tool that we can use when looking through any relationship or correlation of our variables. Ang aton nga t-test, independent t-test, is usually for two variables man nga ginalantaw naton, but usually it's comparing the means of those two variables, not looking for a relationship if there's any. Same with one way ANOVA, comparing the different variables, usually three or more variables, so comparison na siya. Next, number 32, researcher compares, so ara na keyword naton ha, compares the average test scores of students from three different teaching methods. So you have here three variables, which is under the teaching methods. Meron kita traditional, blended, and the other one is online. So which statistical tool should be used to analyze the data? So again, it's letter D, one way, ANOVA. Best, correct, non-correct. Now let's proceed. Number 33. A researcher wants to determine if there is a significant difference. Again, comparing significant difference in math scores between two groups of students, those who studied using traditional methods and those who used online learning tools. What statistical tools should the researcher use? So, may ara kita diri duha ka grupo ka gusto lang naton lantawon if may difference sa ilang nga scores. So comparing the means of two different groups. So di ba may ara kita na dependent sample t-test and independent sample t-test. Kung same group of students, that's dependent sample t-test. But since we are comparing math scores of two different groups or two independent groups, the best statistical tool that we're going to use here is independent t-test. Letter B. Number 34. Why is sampling necessary in a research study when it is not feasible, not applicable to survey the entire population? So the answer here is letter D. It reduces the cost and time required to collect the data. Remember nyo naman kung entire population, magasto kagid na, matravel-travel para lang makakandak sa ila. And it will really take much of your time considering that you're still grade 10 students and most of the time you are here in school from Mondays to Fridays, it would be difficult for you to survey the entire population. So the answer here is letter D. Number 35, a researcher needs to conduct a study on the dietary habits of teenagers in a large city but cannot survey every teenager. What's the main reason for using sampling in this case? So the answer here is letter D, to generalize findings to the entire population of teenagers based on the representative group or sang sample nga ginkuha naton. Number 36. A researcher wants to study the attitudes of high school students towards online learning. The school has 10 different grade levels, and the researcher decides to select 50 students from each grade level to represent the population. Which sampling method is being used? So, the best sampling method that you could use here is stratified random sampling. Kaya nga may ara ko no 10 different grade levels. So, my grades 1 to grade 10 for example, and then they're going to select 50 students from each grade level or from each strata or stratum. So yes, so that's stratified random sampling. Letter C. 37. A researcher wants to investigate the study habits of university students. The university has 5,000 students and the researcher randomly selects 100 students from the entire student body using a random number generator. Which sampling method is being used? So if you notice, 5,000 students and all of them has an equal chance to be selected to become participants or respondents of the study. So may ara diri random selects 100 out of those 5,000 students. So this is an example of a simple random sampling. Number 37, the answer is letter B, bravo. Number 38, which of the following is the best strategy to avoid plagiarism when writing a review of related literature? So the answer here is letter D, using direct quotes and properly citing the sources. So, dapat may in-text citations kita, either narrative or parenthetical in-text citation. Basta you cite the author or whoever says that particular quote that you have directly used. Letter B is incorrect, although ginambal diri you paraphrase the text, pero you take note of the succeeding words. You paraphrase the text without citing the original source. This is a no-no. Di bala? We have to always cite whoever whoever wrote that idea or shared that idea or findings. Letter A is also incorrect. You copy the text exactly. Ano pa gid? Letter C, summarizing the text and not including the source information. So still incorrect. So the correct answer in number 38 is letter D. Number 39, last two questions. A researcher is writing the review of related literature for a study on the impact of social media on adolescent behavior. The researcher organizes the literature based on key themes such as social media usage, psychological effects, and behavioral changes, rather than following a chronological order of studies. Why is thematic organization more effective? Oh, do bonus question na ni kay do same question man ni sa earlier no nga agin pamangkot. Why is it necessary that we organize our review of related literature in review of related literature thematically rather than chronologically? So the answer here is letter A. It allows the researcher to discuss specific areas of interest in depth and makes connection between studies on similar topics. And for the last item, why is it important for students to include a methodology or the entire process of how you conduct your study in this research study? So the answer here is letter C, to provide detailed information about how the research was conducted, ensuring that the study can be replicated and results can be validated. So that is all for the rationalization of our quiz in research. So I hope you were able to take notes of what the correct answer is. You were able to review essential concepts in research from chapter 2 to chapter 3 that we have talked about for the entire second quarter. So good luck, researchers. I hope you would ace the test tomorrow. Good luck and have a good day. Bye bye.